when do you use off the top in the reconciliation tab? To give an example. In our revenue reconciliation that we have in our plan, every department has one. In an O&B plan, we use them. And it's really a tactic for our auditors to be able to, because this is the process they go through, and it's just like what we just saying. What revenues came in there, which one should be offset, which one should not. So we have 3 columns in that revenue reconciliation. We have an off the top column, we have a direct billed column, and we have a general government column. So the general government column is basically the ones that we can exclude. We don't have to pay attention to. It sits there, ignore it. A direct billed is to reconcile to whichever ones that we've said have to do with the service, and we need to give a credit to those departments that paid for it. So for example, like in the attorney's office, they're gonna charge a bill to the Parks Department for their service. I worked on a case for you, you're gonna pay me back, I charged you for my hours. So my hours were this, the staff that worked on the salary was this, here's the money. I paid you $100,000 a year for your service. That's a direct bill. So if some of the revenue we receive is associated with that, we put it in that direct bill column. And our direct bill tab will always reconcile to our reconciliation tab of what's in the column for direct bill. Off the top column is kind of the leftover. We can't identify it as an unallowed revenue or a revenue that doesn't have to do with service, and we can't identify it as a direct bill. So there's two different reasons. One is miscellaneous revenue. And typically they'll have miscellaneous revenues and it's usually a very minimal amount. $4,000, $5,000, whatever. And in most cases, it would take more effort to go pull journals on what exactly those revenues were to then say whether it's unallowable or direct billed than the $4,000 offset would be worth. So we throw it into the off the top, and anything that's in that column must then go into the expenditure screen and create a below the line adjustment for that amount. So if I have $4,000 in off the top revenue, that means I need to reduce my expenditures by $4,000. That means I can't account for it. I don't have anywhere to offset it. So therefore, what's left to do is reduce my expenditures that I'm spreading out to everybody else. So that's a requirement that you have to do. The second time you would use off the top revenues is there's another instance where they're charging departments for their service, but they're kind of a more archaic agency that doesn't have good reporting and doesn't really have a very good way of saying what department paid what. So let's say you're in the city manager's department and you have let's say there's a printing function and they do newsletters or they do whatever in this function and they charge out for service as it goes along, but they never really kept track or they didn't do a good job of reporting who paid what. And let's say it's $50,000 or whatever, and again, you look in the grand scheme of things, it'll take me 2 weeks to be able to give you that detail. And so you say to yourself, is it worth the time? Do I really care? What's it gonna do? Is it mostly general fund departments? Because general fund don't charge each other. So then you throw it in off the top and you reduce that function. So I would say, I'd go into the expenditure screen, I'd create a below the line adjustment for that line item. I'd say negative $50,000, and then I'd send it to that function of printing and I reduce the cost of printing by $50,000. So it means that I cannot identify specifically what department paid for it. I know they paid for it, I just can't tell you who did. So I can't offset it by department, I can only offset it as a whole and reduce the cost going out. And so that's not as accurate as a direct bill, because again, the ratio of which you charge someone is not necessarily the ratio of which the service was received. And what I mean by that is you might only charge a handful of the people that you're servicing. But if you reduce the expenditures, then everyone's expense, like the costs that go out to them, is reduced across the board. And it really only should have been reduced to the 5 people who actually paid. So it's not as accurate, but it's allowable as long as the costs are reduced. So that's what you would use the off the top for.